Welcome back, everybody, to the Victory Podcast. I'm your host, Steve McGrath, alongside Chris Haddad. And today we have another special guest. It is none other than Mark Clayton. Yes, the two-time All-American out of Oklahoma, all Big 12, former first-round pick to the Ravens, 7-year NFL career, and the head of LIVV Headphones, which we're going to get into later. Mark, thank you so much for coming on with us.
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
The starting point that I really wanted to get into with you, because it's still kind of fresh, and I'm sorry to bring it up, but the Red River Rivalry this year was definitely a great game. The fury that Oklahoma put on at the end to come this close to winning. Not that you necessarily have to break down this year's game, but I just wanted to ask you, being in that game, what is that atmosphere like? How much did that game mean to you guys year in and year out?
Oh, that atmosphere is incredible. It's incredible. There's none like it in college football, and it is historically unique and will always be. And just kind of going into the stadium alone, with the fans kind of split. On the road that you're going in through the Fair Park is special. It's really special.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I live in Texas, and I felt like the whole stage shut down. So I can only imagine what it was like playing in it. Yeah. But I just want to take a couple of steps back. Could you walk us through when you're a high school athlete? I'm sure you have a couple options of where do you want to play. You're at the next level. How do you ultimately decide that Oklahoma is where you wanted to go?
Well, I was actually born in Oklahoma City and grew up. I was there until about the 5th grade, and then moved down to Texas, to Arlington, Texas. And so there was a lot of pull there. Excuse me, from the family side. But in high school, I loved NBA, I loved MLB, and watching like Barry Sanders and Cowboys. I didn't watch much college football. And so the first actual college football game that I watched and paid attention to and it stuck was OU Notre Dame when Coach Stoops first got there. And Mike Leach was the coordinator.
Yep.
And so as I was being recruited, that was always, in my mind. And as a young receiver, you want to go to a place in 2000 or 1999, 2000 where they throw the ball, which was not a lot of places, but where they threw the ball all the time because you felt like you had a chance or you would get some opportunity there. And so, it was kind of a combination of those, and then Brent Venables was who recruited me, and Steve Spurrier Jr. was the receiver coach, and so getting to meet them, and those are two polar opposite but very passionate personalities.
Yeah.
And it was sweet to meet them and have them, come after me as a recruit. And that was all that combined was the reason why Oklahoma became the place.
Now, who else do you have on the table? Do you remember, as far as recruiting wise, was Oklahoma, or just Oklahoma led the way and you had your mindset on them the whole time?
No. So it was almost Missouri. So in high school, I played wide receiver essentially one game at the end of my junior year on varsity, and then my senior year. We had a kid named Shadian Mitchell that year who was one of the top 10 players in Texas. So we got a lot of recruits coming, see him. And then our quarterback, Brendan Hassel, was one of the top quarterbacks in Texas, and he ended up going to TCU. Shadian ended up going to Missouri. But we had a lot of recruits come and watch those guys because of their rankings. And then as I progressed as a receiver, starting in 7-on-7 actually down at A&M, the letters started, coming in. And so at the end of it, it came down to, hey, me and Shadian being one of my best friends at the time, like, man, we can go to the same school. And so Missouri was on the menu. And that was strongly considered. And then at the end of the recruiting process, LSU came in, and that was when Nick Saban had just got the job, and so he had came out, and that was that was the last school kind of that where I was like, man, that could be cool. And
Yeah.
so between LSU and OU, it really came down to, and then Missouri was a kind of third.
That's cool. And just, Steve mentioned all your accolades at the top of the show. I want to skip a little bit ahead here. Just, it's very interesting, this story. So talk about your quarterback, Jason White. And, I have a stat here. He became the third Heisman Trophy winner not to be drafted. And the other two guys, Pete Dawkins chose a military career and Charlie Ward chose the NBA. So essentially he's the only guy to just not get drafted. Why do you think that was? Is there anything, I guess, that stuck out to you? Because, he won the Heisman and he lit it up.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give you the floor for that and just get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of that had more to do with his injuries.
Okay.
Than anything. He had the 2 torn ACL. He did go into camp with the Titans. And sure enough, he retired quick because of his knees. Just killed him, would swell up, and he couldn't take his drop. Couldn't take a drop.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah, so it was like he gave it all he had.
Yep.
And won the Heisman and went on to the Nationals, and we got crushed versus USC, and that was about all that his body could take. And so I do think a lot of him not being drafted was nobody wanted to take a chance with the 2 ACL surgeries back to back, ACL surgeries that he had.
Yeah, hitting the top of that drop puts a lot of stress on that back leg too, especially.
Yeah.
And there was no running gun back then where everything is shotgun now and you can sit there. It was 5-7 step drops too. So you definitely need those knees. So skipping ahead here just a little bit more, you get drafted by the Ravens. What was the biggest thing? I know we asked you this in the positional question, what it was like going from high school to college. But let's talk about going to college to the NFL now. What was the biggest adjustment scheme-wise going from college to the NFL?
Is IQ. Is totally mental.
Yeah.
I think physically guys are as, everybody's fast, they're strong. You got to build. You're there because you're able. The thing that sets you apart is the mental aspect of it and understanding not only your scheme, but their scheme. And then how to, you guys are going to try to take advantage of that. And then playing the games that are, within the games with the guys that are across the field from you. So understanding how specific defensive backs play man or zone. They have different techniques. And some are more aggressive than others, and some are passive. Like it's just a lot of just consuming knowledge before you step foot on the field, and that's the thing that ultimately allows you to kind of be you as a player and just kind of play free. But man, it's just a whole nother world. And in Baltimore, we had our defensive backs. My rookie year was Deion Sanders was in his last year where he wore his jersey number was his age. It's hilarious. We had Samari Rolle and Dale Carter, who had played for a long time and was good. And then we had, Ed Reed was, kind of safety. He would play cornerback sometimes because he could. But our secondary, Chris McAllister.
Yeah.
He was phenomenal. I think he had the first major $70 million deal as a defensive back. That defense was special. And I got to learn and listen to those guys talk about, how they look at receivers and what they look for in route running and what gives them, cues and lets them know. Because there was one day, one-on-one training camp, my rookie year, Chris, me and Chris McAllister, he's off man, 7-8 yards. I'm running a post corner. And for me, I'm like, offensive sell the hell out of this post. Put this foot in the ground, and I'm riding out to the side. Man,
he just closed.
I almost dislocated my hip trying to sell the post. He didn't even move. Come on. It almost looked like a comeback. And I was like, dude, what? he was like, I was just feeling you. I was looking at the quarterback the whole time. I knew you weren't going to go post because his shoulders stayed down. I was like, come on, man.
So, I mean, you look at '06, you had a pretty damn good year, right? 67 receptions, 939 yards, and 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Could you credit that to coming in rookie year and those guys kind of not necessarily taking you under their wing, but I mean, you got to go against those guys every single day. That next year you step in there and it's a piece of cake.
No doubt. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The game slowed down fast, real fast. In training camp, it was, and it always be like, MC, this is just like high school, bro. Like, and there's just a reminder that it's just football. Like it's, curl, out to out.
Exactly.
It's just football. Like, but the pressure of being in the NFL is one of the things that you have to deal with or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's just football. And so being around those guys helped season me, so to speak. And it made that, that season it was fun and light. And also the practices. It was the first year Coach Billick had us leave the building at 3 p.m. Like we couldn't be in the building after 3.
No kidding.
So we came in, did our meetings, practice, and everybody had to go home. Yep.
Oh, and why was that? Is that just he just wanted guys to maximize the time?
Yep. Well, his deal was like, hey, we're gonna do what we have to do, and we're gonna go hard, and then we're gonna go home.
Okay.
And we're gonna, I'm not supposed to, spend a bunch of time on extra, leaning over stuff, or we're not supposed to spend a bunch of time on the field just beating your legs up. You guys are pros, and this is what we're gonna do. And I was like, man, it was by far the funnest season. We ended up 13-3 that year, and then we lost to Peyton, freaking Colts in the division. But yeah, it was just being around those guys was huge for growth.
Yeah, and the last question before I pass it back to Steve. We've had a fair share of former and current NFL players on, and I don't think, Steve, one thing we haven't really talked about is the pressure, right? And you mentioned it earlier, just on like the pressure of playing. Like, how is it more of just from like a business standpoint of like I need to perform well, so I can essentially support my family, or is it more of just the pressure of thousands and thousands of people screaming at you? Because I mean, you played in front of a pretty big crowd in college, so I feel like that pressure isn't the same as the NFL pressure. Am I on the right page with that?
Yeah. It's definitely not so much that as much as it is. Hey, this is your job. This is what you get paid to do, and if you're not doing a good job, we'll find somebody else to do that job. And at the same time, there's somebody always coming after your job.
Yeah.
And so it's a level of pressure to perform. You get paid to do this, so do they. But it's something that decreases with experience for sure.
Yeah, makes sense. I just wanted to ask you, your time in Baltimore, you come in at a time where Brian Billick had won a Super Bowl, but he's still with the Ravens. And then by the time you leave, Harbaugh's the coach who, after you're no longer with the Ravens, goes on to win a Super Bowl. But you were kind of there for the end of an era, beginning of a new era, and so just in terms of the coaches. But, Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, a lot of the holdovers from the first regime you still played with.
Yeah.
What was it like just looking at those two head coaches? Why do you think they've both been successful?
I think a big part of the success in that organization starts with Art Modell, Steve Bisciotti, and Ozzie Newsome, and then the coaching staff that that they put together, and then the players, because players play, and they got Ozzie does a great job of just bringing in ballers, like straight up people that people don't. Like there was a time where I'll be like, oh my God, like Bart Scott is playing better than Ray. Everybody knows who Bart Scott is. But I was like, oh, like dude, this dude is a beast. And Ozzie did a great job of just finding these guys and just talent, and continually giving the coaches tools. And so seeing Harbaugh come in and take over was an interesting transition too, because Harbaugh had a more, I'll say, kind of college mentality. Billick was a hands off, and the coaches will handle it. They'll put in the scheme, um, and you guys are pros, so I trust that you'll do your homework and show up and practice, and and we're gonna be fine. Harbaugh wanted to be involved in everything. He was more a micromanager, and with that group having a bunch of veterans, it actually didn't start off well. There was a few arguments, team meetings that had uproars, like, and Ed and Harbaugh and we got in a fight over like just how he wanted to approach things versus how we collectively wanted to approach things. And so that was a heck of a transition. But I think what happened was just we were all ultimately able to get on the same page. Whereas it's just had to be a level of respect. These guys are been doing this, and collecting checks that are bigger than yours, and you can't treat them in any kind of way, and they're definitely not in college. And so there had to be some give there, and then some give on the player side. Like, coach, we got you. Communicate with us, and vice versa. And he was able to do that, and then go on to the consecutive years of playoff appearances.
Yeah.
But ultimately they won the Super Bowl, which is awesome.
Yeah, right. And then, and I want to switch more to the offensive side here. And you've played under Pat Shurmur and Josh McDaniels, two guys who are still coaching the NFL. Yeah, what made them special?
Shurmur was really, that West Coast offense, and to me it was awesome. Was leaving Baltimore, where our deal was cater to the defense and just don't mess up offense. With Shurmur, was like, hey, we had Sam Bradford. He was the first round first pick.
Another Oklahoma boy.
That's right. And so he was like, hey, we're throwing this ball. We're gonna throw it. Don't worry about it. Like, we're gonna throw it, and it's gonna come to you, or you're gonna be ready. I was like, absolutely. And so essentially, the first game that I played with Shurmur, I think we threw the ball 50 times. And that was just it. We're just going to go. Mm-hmm. Throw. And he was real laid back. His personality was, and he wasn't, real fiery or anything like that. But obviously I enjoyed that as a receiver. Right. The first game I had like 10 catches. And then with Josh, his offense is it is way more complex. But I loved his approach. We talked more about what defenses did than anything, and how we were going to take advantage of that. This is what Here there was like 3 focuses, for the week based on their weaknesses, and we're going to hit that in a number of different ways, and disguise it and do the same thing. And it was awesome. And I wish, from a injury standpoint, I was able to recover better than I did, and really get to spend time and play in that offensive system. Maybe even go back to New England with them, but wasn't able to. But it was a great experience, and just he opened my eyes to a lot more, giving me a better understanding of defenses. Yeah. And then how to expose defenses offensively.
Now, when you say that it's complex, do you mean the sense of terminology? Or do you mean the sense of like you have to understand what the defense is doing because you got to run this specific route? Is that like the complex terminology you mean, or?
No, yeah, absolutely. It was, and so certain offenses are concepts. One word means a bunch of things.
Yep.
And then there's the number system.
Yep.
So you get your formation, your protection, and then 678, whatever it is. And then there's a combination of both with tags, And so his was it wasn't. It was all of the above.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And so you didn't like it. It was concepts. It was number system, and then it was kind of like West Coast too. So there was no, it just depended on the week where he would pull from the playbook. It was one of the thickest playbooks that I ever, dealt with and went through. Like, and the amount of formation and routes that he has is awesome.
So do you think, and this is my last question here before I give it back to Steve too, is do you think that's why, I mean, there's been some pretty high profile guys that have gone to New England but haven't got the system, so to say, and they've kind of fizzled out. Do you think that's a big part of it? Is just not being able to get a hold of, I've been a concept guy my whole life, or I've been a West Coast guy my whole life, and
right.
they can't grab it.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, coming and depending on how many years you spent in a certain system, and then it changes. Can be difficult. Can be difficult.
Yep.
And yeah, that's how it is.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, Mark, as promised, I want to transition over to what you've been doing after your NFL career. LIVV brand headphones. I know they look like they are just, next level. So can you just tell me a little bit about, like, how did you develop that idea, and how did you, ultimately make the strides that you've made where it looks like it's, a top level product, and, you're out there competing with, the Beats of the world and Bose?
Well, yeah, we're not much a blip on the map in compared to those two. But the concept started with, I was running routes for Pregame, and I did have my Beats on, and they would slide, and I had to adjust them, and then I had a pair, fall off and snap, and I loved the over-ear headphones, and so my thought process was, hey, I figure I can make an over-ear headphone that'll just it'll stay on my head and be a little more secure than this one, and so that's where the concept came from. And in high school, I didn't think I was actually going to go to college to play football, but thought I would go to the service and try to be an engineer. And so kind of put my engineering hat on, thought of a headband concept that I thought would allow for an over-ear headphone to stay put. And so sketched that and came up with what you're seeing now, if you go to livvheadphones.com, with a partner of mine out of Nashville. And so getting that and testing it and seeing the results just kind of spurred, like, really pursuing it and going on to spend time in China to produce and develop it. And so now I'm 3 years into it, and this last round that we launched, and we sold about 1,000 units. I did a crowdfund, and we did about 100,000 in 30 days.
Oh.
And the goal was to have this be, R&D for us, where we can learn. And and me, it was like school. I know how to run routes, but I don't know how to build headphones or market or anything like that. So this has all been a hell of a learning process, and it's been incredible. And so it's been a really cool and tough 3 years of what I'll say research and development. And at this point, I feel I'm excited to have went and produced and manufactured and delivered a headphone to an end user or customers, and I'm looking forward to making some changes and coming out with a second version that will be head and shoulders better than the one that we have now.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah. I'd have to imagine, being a NFL wide receiver where you have to be so self-reliant, live up to the pressure. You got to, be a professional. I'm sure in a lot of ways it's probably helped you take on an entrepreneurial role where it's all on you. You got to do this and you got to learn that. And, it's always a challenge. But I would assume that just playing, at such a high level all the way through your Oklahoma days that you're probably used to it. Like it's no problem. Just go up and go to work.
Yeah. It's definitely helped with the transition. It's helped with dealing with, pitfalls and failures, and that didn't work out like we thought it would. And staying patient and just a lot of those things. And that's what I tell people, about putting their kids in sports. Just there's so many invaluable aspects of sport that just cross over to doing life on a day-to-day basis. And so a lot of that has been really big in helping me, get through this process and continue in this process, because there's been a few times where I'm like, man, I think I'm just gonna shut it down and call it quits, because it's rough and it's expensive.
Yeah, right.
So yeah.
Definitely. Well, obviously, we wish you the best of luck. Wow, we'll definitely be supporting LIVV, LIVV, for all of our listeners. But before we wrap this up, we have to have you run through the gauntlet one last time. Just a couple quick questions for you where we need to know your knee-jerk answer.
Okay.
So, Mark, I have to ask you, what is most important, having the #1 offense or the #1 defense?
#1 offense.
Now, did you have one player or one coach that you would have wished, if you could go back and do it again, that you would have had the opportunity to play for or play with?
John Fox.
And why John Fox?
I got to meet him a couple times, and he was just fun loving. He was fun loving dude. Like, feel like I would have connected really well with him. Yeah, and so I've always kind of, I was like, man, he's just such a cool dude. Like, I would love to play for him.
Best cover corner you went up against?
The Red River.
Fair enough. You got put on the island.
Yeah.
Did you have a specific pregame ritual? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. I was saying he was the most patient.
Did you have a specific pregame ritual that you stuck to?
Yeah. I before every game I get out early and I just do a jog around the field and talk to God and just soak in the fact that I'm playing football and making a living. And it was just these moments, and at that time was like, this is not real life. This is not going to last. So really, first thing was do a jog, spend time with God, just soak in that moment in time, knowing that they wouldn't last. And then stretch, functional movement, stretching, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then run routes with the quarterback.
If you could run, what was your favorite route on the route tree? If you could run one more, what would it be?
Soon 7, which is soon 7 or soon 7 and go.
Got it. And last one, before we let you off the hook, what's most important, the players or the scheme?
Scheme.
All right, there you have it.
I'm a scheme guy. Yeah. That's a good one, but
yeah. Think about it.
It is.
Yeah, I did.
Awesome. Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming on with us. We really appreciate you taking the time to update us on how LIVV is doing. And everyone, just go to is it livheadphones.com?
Yes, livheadphones.com. LIVV Headphones.com.
All right. Thank you for talking to us, updating us on that, and just giving us the overview of your Oklahoma days and the NFL stuff. We appreciate it.
No problem, man. Thank you guys.